many times have you been stopped by police at a random spot check as you're walking down the street or just simply staying in front of a bar? Well, for many of us, we can easily count it on one hand, but for some, that number is too many to count. Desmond Cole, a staff writer at the Torontoist and a radio host on Newstalk 1010, he's penned a feature article in Toronto Life magazine titled "The Skin I'm In, It's a Story of His Life Growing Up as a Black Man in Southern Ontario." He says he's been stopped and interrogated for over 50 times, all because of his skin color. And Desmond Cole joins us now from Toronto. Thanks for being with us, Desmond.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
You've written a really poignant account of your life, starting from when you were young, with your family, being stopped in the car with your dad driving, to, when you were in university and having campus police stop you. Why did you feel the need to tell the world this story?
I think I wanted to tell this story because I know that these experiences are not just my own. I know that many black people, I would suggest that most black people living in this part of the country have had this kind of experience with police at some time or another. And of course, it's not just about policing. It's also about being followed around your local department store. It's about certain ways that people react to you in public that are informed by racial stereotypes and prejudices. I don't want those prejudices to dominate the way that we treat each other, and that's why I wanted to write about this.
Desmond, we have a new police chief. Mark Saunders got a ton of attention yesterday. He seems to be at least a fan, if not a supporter of carding. The police union supports carding. Leaving aside all of the issues that get the loudest of attention, do you ever allow for the possibility that the police aren't bigoted when they go through neighborhoods that are high crime, where we know there's a lot of violent crime, or at the end of the day, to you, is it pure racism and bigotry?
Well, Ari, I think that I've never used the word bigotry to describe the police, but just the same as our society is racist, there is institutionalized racism within the police. That doesn't mean that police are individually racist, out to get black people. That's not what I'm saying. But you just mentioned carding, which for your viewers that don't know, is when you stop people on the street and document them even though they're not suspected of any crime. The rate that happens to black people like myself far exceeds our population. We're getting over-policed in this regard. And Ari, you did a funny thing there. You mentioned violent crime, right? I would think that the police, if they were going to stop me 50 times on the street, which, by the way, has produced no useful criminal information, I would think that they would do that because I was doing something and not because of the color of my skin. So this has nothing to do with violent crime. It just has to do with seeing a black person and thinking you have the right to interrogate them, which the police don't have.
So, Desmond, do you think that persistent discrimination can change someone's path and actually push them towards a life of crime or anti-establishment or anti-authority behavior?
I mean, it's very clear that anybody who gets treated by the police the way that many black people do would be rightfully and understandably angry at the police for that treatment. If you get stopped going to the store, driving your kids to school, coming home from work, time after time after time, of course you're going to start to resent the practice, not just asking questions, but starting to be frustrated by that. I think that that's a natural response for people.
Did that happen to you?
Oh, I'm very, very angry about the experiences that I've had, but I'm also very blessed that I have this opportunity to write and to share how I feel with other people so that they can understand. There's a defensiveness that comes up when we talk about this issue where people just don't want to talk about it because they think that by talking about it, they're admitting to be racist or they're admitting this huge discrimination. Look, we just have to be honest, and I'm blessed to be able to be a journalist, but also to be a journalist in a climate where not a lot of people want to talk about this kind of issue. We have to talk about it.
Well, let's talk about it. You use the word defensiveness, you use the word honest. It seems to me that in this conversation, that unless you're on the side of those opposed to carding, unless you're sort of on the Desmond Cole side, you appreciate, Desmond, there are arguments that certain areas deserve more focus than the Ancasters, the Rosedales, the Forest Hills. It seems to me that when people sort of don't agree with your position, and help me out here, Desmond, that a lot of the things coming from the side of those really against carding are that those who talk about it from a different point of view, they're racist, they're biased, they're bigoted. What do you say to those who say we can't have an open and honest conversation about this?
So you've done it again. You've put words in my mouth, Ari, that I have not used. But let me try to answer what you're saying here. Ari, you talked about Rosedale, which is a very prominently white neighborhood. If you read the stats, you will know that the more white residents there are in a neighborhood in Toronto, the more likely I as a black person am to get stopped. One of the biggest misconceptions about this practice is that it's happening in all of the areas where black and brown people live. And of course it is, but the highest rate of people being stopped disproportionately, black people being stopped, is in the downtown heart of Toronto, where almost no black people live. So this is about us being followed. It's not about a neighborhood, it's not about an area, and I think that you need to check some of your own biases on this, Ari. I'm not accusing you of racism, but you should look at the stats.
No, I know, Desmond. This is the point you make to anybody who asks you a question you don't like. They're biased, they're wrong, they're racist.
I just gave you the stats. Just to disagree
Desmond,
with the stats or provide other ones.
We know the stats. They're in your article about violent crime in areas. So let me just take this in a different direction. The new police chief, as I said at the beginning, let's say you became the chief tomorrow and you have a lot of citizens in communities that are predominantly black who are fed up with violence, who are fed up with the crime that they see there, and they want the police to do something. If you're concerned about public safety and you're the chief, Desmond, what do you start doing tomorrow that isn't being done today?
I would end carding, Ari, and the reason that I would do it is because stopping innocent civilians on their own streets time after time, taking their personal information when they're not suspected of a crime and putting it into a database, that is the guaranteed way to alienate people who the police are trying to work with. So rather than treat everyone in a community, everyone of a skin color, as though they deserve this because of a racist notion of violent crime, I would actually say, because you're innocent, because this is your community, I am not going to treat you like a suspect in your own neighborhood. I'm going to respect you, and I'm going to work with you. That's how you rebuild trust. Anything else is not going to cut it.
Okay, I want to ask you, in terms of visible minorities, the highest number in Toronto is actually South Asian at 12%. Then you've got the Chinese at 10%, and then blacks at 8.5%. That's a number you also put in your story. So why do you think South Asian and Chinese don't talk about being treated the same way?
Actually, a lot of them do, and I'm speaking from my experience as a black person, so I can't speak to another person's experiences. We've had incidents where Chinese people who fish up north of Toronto have been targeted by people who don't like them fishing in their communities. We've had covers of Maclean's magazine saying that our universities are becoming too Asian. Anti-black discrimination is a specific kind of thing, just like you would say anti-Semitism is a specific kind of discrimination. There's specific kinds of discrimination. The kind that I have to face every day is the idea that I'm a criminal, that I'm going to walk out on the street and do something, and that somehow over-policing me, like I said, what useful material criminal investigation has ever been gotten from following me and stopping me 50 times? Zero. It's only a stereotype about black people as criminals, though, that allows that to happen, and that's why I have to speak out.
Well, you're right, Desmond. Actually, the best argument against carding, which is never made, and McCormick from the police union, from the chief on down, they'll never say it aloud, there's no proof that carding actually helps solve crimes. But let's
Correct.
go back to your piece, which is why you're here. You write a beautiful piece. It's compelling about your experiences. But there's a part that there was missing there, which is you made a decision. You ended up the valedictorian of your class. You ended up extracurricular activities. Your parents instilled on you a respect for authority. You made a turn in life that not only you're proud of, but everybody listening to this interview will say, this guy's got it. Isn't there an element in the communities that you say are facing racism and carding and bigotry? Isn't there an element of being able to say to those people that are carrying guns and causing all sorts of issues, don't they have a responsibility to look in the mirror? I never hear you talk about that.
Why do you want me to talk about a small number of people who are committing crimes when I'm trying to talk to you about a large number of people who aren't and are nevertheless targeted for it? Why are you doing that, Ari? This is the reason why you get called out for racism and bias all of the time, is because you seem obsessed with these notions of, pulling up one by the bootstraps. If this was the way that the world works, no one would be poor. No one would choose to be in a poor community. No one would choose to have their parents break up. No one would choose to drop out of school. The idea that I just made these choices and that's why I'm here is incredibly naive of you, sir.
Well, Desmond, this is what you do. You label these things. Nobody else calls me this but for you on a show where you get to have the last word. But see, I'm concerned about public safety. So by asking questions that are intended to keep everybody safe,
you've admitted that the police's tactics don't address public safety. So
that's right. But these are questions, Desmond, and you shut down the conversation by calling people these names.
Okay, guys. So we are out of time. Obviously, lots more conversation to be had. We'll have to save it for another show. Thank you, Desmond Cole, for being here. Appreciate you sharing your story with us. Thanks.
Anytime.